Welcome to France, a country synonymous with romance, exquisite cuisine, and unparalleled art and architecture. From the iconic Eiffel Tower in Paris to the breathtaking lavender fields of Provence, the snowy peaks of the Alps, and the sun-kissed beaches of the French Riviera, France's beauty captivates and enchants at every turn. But France is not just about picturesque landscapes and fine wine. This powerhouse of a nation boasts the world's seventh-largest economy, driven by its robust industries such as aerospace, automotive, luxury goods, and, of course, tourism. France is also a leading player in cutting-edge fields like renewable energy, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. Yet beneath this captivating beauty and economic prowess lies a contentious issue: the French pension protests. In today's video, we'll delve into the complexities of the French pension system, the reasons behind the protests, and the perspectives of those involved. So, you might have heard about the ongoing protests in France. Well, they're all about President Emmanuel Macron's new law that aims to raise the legal retirement age from 62 to 64. People are not happy, and the situation is getting pretty intense. The government barely survived a no-confidence vote after Macron decided to push the change through the lower house of parliament without a full vote. But the protests haven't stopped. In fact, they're still going strong in the streets of France. There have been spontaneous and sometimes violent demonstrations, met with a heavy police response. Although some protests seem to be losing steam, the passion behind the movement remains strong. Now, everyone's waiting for the Constitutional Council's ruling on the law, which should come on Friday. Many legal experts think the council might strike down some parts of the plan, but uphold the increase in the retirement age. Over the past couple of months, some protests have drawn more than 1 million people. This outcry has turned into a significant challenge for Macron, especially after his re-election last year. Polls show that most French people don't agree with his pension overhaul. You see, in France, generous retirement benefits are a big part of the nation's identity. Macron and his government argue that they need to change the pension system to make it more financially stable as life expectancy goes up and the ratio of workers to retirees goes down. But opponents, including a united front of labor unions, aren't convinced. They believe Macron is attacking the cherished right to retirement and unfairly putting the burden on blue-collar workers, all because he doesn't want to increase taxes on the wealthy. So far, neither side is backing down. Macron has made it clear that he's committed to getting this done, even if it defines his second term in office. It's fascinating to see how this issue continues to unfold as the French people grapple with the balance between tradition and financial sustainability. Stay tuned as we keep you updated on the latest developments in this heated debate. It's not the first time that pension reform has stirred up controversy in France. In fact, it's been a hot-button issue for decades, even before Mr. Macron stepped into office. There were massive protests back in 1995 which were successful, and in 2010, which ultimately failed. It seems Mr. Macron's pension plans have faced fierce opposition not once, but twice. Rewind to 2019, during his first term, Mr. Macron tried to revamp France's pension system, which led to enormous street protests and crippling strikes, including one of the longest transportation walkouts in French history. But when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, he decided to put those plans on hold. There's an important distinction between Mr. Macron's previous attempt at pension reform and his current proposal. The initial project didn't involve raising the legal retirement age. Instead, he wanted to simplify the incredibly complex pension system by consolidating 42 different pension programs into a single, fairer system based on points that workers would accumulate and redeem upon retirement. However, this left many people feeling confused and worried that their pensions would shrink. What is the president's plan? Basically, he's trying to balance the French pension system's finances by encouraging people to work longer. Now, the government knows this isn't going to be easy for everyone, but they believe it's a necessary step to take. You see, France has this pay-as-you-go pension system where workers and employers pay mandatory payroll taxes to fund retiree pensions. This system has allowed generations of French citizens to retire with a guaranteed state-backed pension, and that's not going to change. In fact, France has one of the lowest rates of pensioners at risk of poverty in Europe, and a pretty high pension replacement rate compared to the OECD and EU averages. However, the government is worried about the future because people are living longer. Back in 2000, there were 2.1 workers paying into the pension system for every retiree. By 2020, that ratio fell to 1.7, and it's expected to drop to 1.2 by 2070. Although there's no immediate explosion of the deficit, as Antoine Bozio, an economist at the Paris School of Economics, puts it, there's still a long-term problem that needs addressing. To tackle this issue without pouring more taxpayer money into the pension system, Macron's plan is to gradually raise the legal age for collecting a pension. Under this plan, the age would increase by 3 months every year until it reaches 64 in 2030. The government is also speeding up a previous change that increases the number of years workers must pay into the system to get a full pension. Also, they're putting an end to special pension rules that benefited workers in certain sectors like energy and transportation. So, why are so many people against this plan? Critics argue that Macron has exaggerated the threat of projected deficits and refused to consider alternative methods for balancing the system, such as raising worker payroll taxes, uncoupling pensions from inflation, removing corporate tax breaks, or increasing taxes on wealthier households. Even France's official pension monitoring body has acknowledged that there's no immediate risk of bankruptcy and that long-term deficits are difficult to predict accurately. Opponents also argue that making people work longer would unfairly impact blue-collar workers, who often start their careers earlier and have a shorter life expectancy on average compared to white-collar workers. This has led to intermittent walkouts by workers in various sectors, such as schools, public transportation, and fuel refineries. Additionally, some are concerned about age discrimination in the job market, which could make it difficult for older adults who want to work but lose their jobs to find new employment. The unpopularity of the plan is also connected to pre-existing resentment against Macron, who has had a hard time shaking off his image as an out-of-touch president of the rich. As a result, opposition to the project has intensified. In response, the government announced measures to appease the opposition, such as exemptions for those who start working earlier and measures to help seniors stay employed. They also plan to increase smaller pensions, but this backfired after it was revealed that the bump would be weaker than initially announced. These concessions, however, have not placated the unions or opposition lawmakers. The pension bill was approved by the conservative-controlled Senate, but Macron faced difficulties in the National Assembly, where his party and its allies no longer have an absolute majority. This led to Macron using Article 49.3 of the French Constitution to push the bill through the National Assembly without a vote, a move that has been increasingly seen as undemocratic over the past decade. A no-confidence motion filed by the far-right National Rally Party failed, but another motion, filed by independent lawmakers and supported by a broad coalition of opposition parties, came much closer to passing. With 278 votes in favor, it fell only 9 votes short of success. As the situation continues to unfold, the future of the French pension system remains uncertain. So, what's next for the plan? Well, some legislators who aren't on board with Macron's plans have started a process that could potentially lead to a referendum. However, this is an incredibly lengthy and complicated process that has never actually been successful before. Also, others have brought the new pension law before the Constitutional Council, a group that checks if legislation aligns with the French Constitution. The main concern here is whether the government's use of certain parliamentary procedures, typically reserved for budget measures, was appropriate for speeding up the process. Despite these challenges, the government remains confident that the core elements of the law will hold up. On the other hand, some lawmakers and union leaders believe that only more strikes and protests will persuade Macron to rethink his pension overhaul. Jean-Luc Mélenchon, a prominent leftist leader, has said that it's time to shift from parliamentary censorship to popular censorship. Interestingly, there's a historical example that might give some hope to the protesters. Back in 2006, the French government ended up scrapping a disputed youth jobs contract after it had already become law. As of now, though, Macron is still pushing forward with his plans. There you have it. Do you think the president of France will succumb to the will of the people, Or will he ultimately move on with his plans?